Good evening and a warm welcome to all of you here on the news tonight, where we get you the day's top stories from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilshi, and let's take you through the headlines this Saturday evening. The Prime Minister meets China's top CEOs in Shanghai as both countries sign deals worth more than $22 billion. Modi hard sells his Make in India initiative. The Prime Minister now arriving in Mongolia, a first by any Indian Prime Minister. Special session of Parliament is convened on Sunday for Modi's address. Back home, the Kejriwal-Najib Jung tussle continues. The Delhi Chief Minister transfers the Principal Secretary after the LG appointed Chief Secretary takes charge. Seeks time with the President to draw attention to the matter. Former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi is sentenced to death for his role in the 2011 mass jailbreak. Religious authorities to give their opinion before the execution. And the Boston Marathon bomber will be executed by lethal injection. A U.S. court sentences Tsarnaev to death for killing 3 people in the 2013 attack. First, our focus on Modi's trip to China. On the third and final day of his trip today, an array of business agreements took center stage. Indian and Chinese firms signed deals worth $22 billion as the Prime Minister pitched his Make in India initiative to Shanghai's industry leaders. Here's more.
After the political and strategic side in Beijing, on to the all-critical business aspect. Prime Minister Modi's meeting with China's industry leaders in the commercial capital Shanghai was read for the actual deal signed as well as the wider atmospherics. Indian and Chinese firms signed 26 agreements officials said were worth a total of $22 billion. A list circulated by Indian officials showed many of the contracts were for Chinese banks to finance Indian firms and also included deals in the telecom, steel, solar energy and film sectors. Modi pitched his pet Make in India program before an audience that's often touted as critical to its success.
We are going to develop smart cities and mega industrial corridors. For this purpose, we have refined our foreign direct investment policy in construction. We are modernizing our railway system, including signals, engines and railway stations.
Outlining steps taken by his government towards improving the business environment, Modi said India is the back office to the world, even as he termed China the world's factory, stressing that working together can bring peace and prosperity for both.
I can assure you that once you decide to be in India, we are confident to make you more and more comfortable.
But there's no refusing the fact that major gaps need to be bridged. China is India's biggest trading partner with two-way commerce totaling $71 billion in 2014. But India's trade deficit with China has soared from just $1 billion in 2001-2 to more than $38 billion last year. Highlighting a combination of cultural commonalities and business potential with China, that's been the thrust of Prime Minister Modi's meetings in Shanghai. Taking promises forward will be the key now.
All in all, of course, it was a successful visit hailed by both sides, China and India. In Shanghai, 21 agreements were signed between business organizations, and both nations are hoping with that the trade deficit will be erased. It remains to be seen whether or not that's going to be a possibility. With camera person DK Pandey, this is Frank Pereira for Rajya Sabha Television, Shanghai, China.
And it was not just the Chinese, but also the Indian diaspora that Modi impressed today. In a Madison Square-like event, Modi addressed Indians in Shanghai today and told them to take pride in the changing face of India. Here's a report.
Very much, yes. I am from a city known as Cebu. I live there. And I had the pleasure of...
A 5,000-strong crowd of Indians awaiting Prime Minister Modi in Shanghai as he wrapped up his 3-day tour of China.
Wonderful, wonderful. He is the most popular leader ever come here.
And the welcome was a reminder of his Madison Square outing.
वक्त किस तेजी से बदल रहा है, कोई कल्पना कर सकता था कि चीन में भारतीय नागरिक इस प्यार मोहब्बत की जिंदगी जी रहे हैं जिसे आज दुनिया देख रही है.
This address coinciding with the Modi government completing 1 year in office, the Prime Minister using the opportunity to highlight the NDA's achievements.
आज 16 मई है. ठीक एक साल पहले 16 मई 2014, ये जो 2.5 घंटे का टाइम डिफरेंस है ना, उसने आपको सबसे ज्यादा परेशान किया था. बहुत जल्दी उठ करके, जबकि हिंदुस्तान में लोग सोए थे, आपने पूछना शुरू कर दिया था रिजल्ट क्या आया.
The thrust of his address to the diaspora, however, was the need to develop people-to-people contact between the two countries. He urged Indians in China to do their bit.
हर साल 5 चीनी नागरिकों को हिंदुस्तान देखने के लिए धक्का मारो बस. चीन और भारत मिलकर के न सिर्फ अपनी समस्याओं का समाधान कर सकते हैं, लेकिन वे दुनिया को भी अनेक संकटों से मुक्ति दिला सकते हैं.
As Modi embarked on his visit to Mongolia, the first by any Indian Prime Minister, he took a swipe at his opponents, questioning his foreign trips.
कभी कभार कम काम करना, इसकी आलोचना तो मैं समझ सकता हूं. कोई सोता रहे, काम न करे, इसकी आलोचना तो मैं समझ सकता हूं. लेकिन मेरा तो दुर्भाग्य ऐसा है कि मैं ज्यादा काम करता हूं, उसकी आलोचना होती है.
A swipe that earned him instant applause from the audience.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi concluded his 3-day visit to China in Shanghai. He is now in Mongolia. The grand finale in Shanghai was when he addressed the Indian diaspora, who are waiting for him for hours on, hooting, cheering and just egging the Prime Minister to speak to them. With camera person DK Pandey, this is Frank Pereira for Rajya Sabha Television, Shanghai, China.
And right after his China engagement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now in Mongolia, the second leg of his 3-nation tour. And this is the first ever visit by an Indian PM to the country. During his day-long stay on Sunday, Modi will be meeting his Mongolian counterpart, Khimit Sekhanbilek, and high-level talks are expected, after which several key agreements will be signed to improve bilateral relations between the two countries. Modi will also address the Mongolian parliament tomorrow, which will convene specially on a Sunday, a holiday in the country, for his address. Modi will also be honored by the Mongolian president, who will host a banquet lunch for him. Later in the day, he will lay the foundation stone for an IT hub and will attend a cultural and sports festival. So let's just take in all that has happened in the past 3 days and take a look at what were the highlights. We've got Srimati Chakrabarti, who is a specialist in Chinese studies at the Department of East Asian Studies of the Delhi University, joining us this evening from the capital. Ms. Chakrabarti, thank you so much for joining us. What would you say were the key points really of Modi's visit to China?
Well, I would say the most important part is the strengthening of economic ties between our two countries. In fact, economics or economic ties has always been ahead of political relations, but this time it has been taken a little forward. In fact, quite a bit forward, which was not there earlier. So many agreements worth $24 billion is quite an achievement. And on top of that, I think the other important thing that we see here is Prime Minister Modi very clearly mentioned in his speech to Tsinghua University students, although he was actually talking to the Chinese leadership, that India's concerns should be addressed by China. China should no longer be insensitive to so many concerns that India has, in Chinese regarding Chinese foreign policy. So I think these are the important, things that have emerged in this, visit, and also strengthening of people-to-people relations. I think that is also going to, that has also got a boost, with the agreements between the tourism departments of the two countries, then educational agreements regarding skill development, and then cultural agreements. Doordarshan and CCTV will now have some kind of collaboration. Then the other important thing, yes, I should mention that also, province to province relations. You see, the Chinese have always stressed on that. They have given enough freedom to their own provinces to have economic ties with provinces and other countries and multinationals and others. So the fact that Prime Minister Modi was accompanied by the chief ministers of Gujarat and Maharashtra, and these two states have decided to have relations with the two provinces of China is, I think, quite noticeable and remarkable achievement.
All right. Also, when we speak of Modi, Mr. Chakrabarti, we have to talk about the persona. A leader, of his stature now going to China, and the leaders of China there breaking protocol for him, not just once but twice. The kind of bonhomie that we're seeing between the leaders. Also, for that matter, him going to a country like Mongolia, who in a sense, as far as diplomatic relations is concerned, with trade, etc., it's a small country. We don't have much of relations with them as far as trade's concerned. It's more of a PR exercise. How much do you think it is also for him to just be reaching out, making friends for that matter?
Yes, this particular decision to go to Mongolia after China, I think, was again very significant. There was a lot of bonhomie between him and the Chinese leaders, and we will see bonhomie between him and Mongolian leaders also. Now, we don't have too much of interaction with Mongolia, but at the same time we shouldn't forget that Mongolia, Mongolians have a lot of respect for India, and Indian culture is extremely popular there, and we have not quite taken advantage of that earlier. This is very unfortunate that hardly any Indian Prime Minister has visited that country, but this time that Mr. Modi has done this, I think is a matter of great happiness for Mongolia as well as for us, because our ties with Mongolia are also as old as as that of China, so we should not ignore that. And also strategically, I think it's a good thing that India also improves its relations with all of China's neighbors, because see, all these years we've been hearing the string of pearls theory, right? That China is encircling India by improving its ties with all countries surrounding India. Now, what stops India from improving relations with countries surrounding China? We have not done that earlier. Now we are doing it, and I think it is a very, very good step strategically.
All right. You, of course, said that the highlight, of course, of his visit to China was, the trade pacts that we had, more, of course, of the deals that were, of course, signed there. But just give us a sense, really, about the border issue. That is something, of course, back home, everyone was hoping that he would perhaps take on a bit stronger, but we didn't see much on that front. Would you say there is some disappointment on that front, but he did achieve a little more than perhaps the other government had done?
Well, on that issue, I think it's a bit early to say if, some achievements have been made. You see, much of the border solution to the border will take place through back channel negotiations. It won't happen, all of a sudden that the Prime Minister reaches there and they, talk about the border and they come to a, conclusion. But maybe, in the closed door meetings, the leaders may have decided on a certain mechanism which will at least make the borders more secure, in the sense that so-called incursions will not take place, because the line of actual control is also not clear. He said this in one of his speeches, that no one really knows where the line of actual control is. India has its own view on that, the Chinese have their own view, and that is why so many incursions take place. So he has made it clear that maybe we should at least first try to draw the line of actual control once more, and then make sure that there is peace and tranquility, and incursions that happen once in a while, which sort of create more mistrust in the two countries, should not will not happen.
Right,
so that way, I won't say that a very major achievement has taken place in case of
but we'll have to
the border
issue. We'll have to wait and see if something eventually does materialize.
Has taken, right.
All right. Thank you so
exactly.
much, Ms. Chakraborty, for
Exactly,
joining
right,
us,
right.
giving us your input really and your perspective into what has been quite a successful trip, if you could say, of Modi in China and now, of course, going to be in Mongolia and South Korea as well. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is in Beijing on a two-day visit to discuss tensions with China over its role in the disputed areas of South China Sea. Kerry met Chinese Premier Li Keqiang in Beijing. Li said that China and the U.S. have more closely interwoven interests and wider cooperation than ever. Li also said that China is ready to strengthen exchanges and communication with the U.S. on the basis of mutual respect and equality. Earlier in the day, Kerry met his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi and expressed his concern of the pace and scope of China's reclamation projects in the contested areas of the South China Sea.
I urged China, through Foreign Minister Wang, to take actions that will join with everybody in helping to reduce tensions and increase the prospect of a diplomatic solution.
首先，我想告诉各位的是，或者说我想重申的是，中国维护自身主权、领土完整的意志坚如磐石，不容置疑。这是人民对政府的要求，也是我们正当的权利。
With a quick break here, but still ahead, Kejriwal and Najib Jung locked in a bitter battle in Delhi. Details of that in a bit.
Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira.
Barack Obama has been elected on the basis that I will no longer take America into wars, and in fact quite the opposite, I will pull America out of wars.
According to the Indian government, fishermen are not at fault.
The US intervention in Iraq set the stage for exacerbation of these conflicts, and then the intervention in Syria.
Watch World Panorama at these times on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Now, the long-standing feud between the Delhi Chief Minister and the Lieutenant Governor saw another twist today. The Delhi government has a new Chief Secretary and Kejriwal is not happy about it. In response to the LG's decision to appoint a Chief Secretary of his choice, Kejriwal has transferred his Principal Secretary for following the LG's order.
Kejriwal versus Najib Jung. On a day when IS officer Shakuntala Gamlin took additional charge as Chief Secretary of Delhi, the Delhi Chief Minister transferred his Principal Secretary. The reason for the transfer that the Principal Secretary followed the Lieutenant General's direction and issued the order of posting for Gamlin. The Lieutenant Governor, however, has overturned Kejriwal's order. This is the latest in a series of face-offs between the Delhi Chief Minister and Najib Jung. Gamlin's appointment has been questioned by the Aam Aadmi Party, who says it is blatant administrative overreach.
ऐसा हो रहा है कि एलजी सीधे निर्देश दे रहे हैं अधिकारियों को। सीएम को किनारे कर दिया गया, कैबिनेट को किनारे कर दिया गया और सीधे एक तरह से एलजी साहब के माध्यम से सरकार चलाने की कोशिश की जा रही है अधिकारियों को निर्देश देके।
Delhi's Deputy Chief Minister also accused the Lieutenant Governor of being an agent of the BJP. The BJP was quick to hit back.
इन सारे रूल्स को संविधान की धज्जियां उड़ाते हुए, कानूनों की धज्जियां उड़ाते हुए, रूल्स की धज्जियां उड़ाते हुए कल मुझे नहीं बताया गया, मंत्री को नहीं बताया गया, सीधे अधिकारियों को निर्देश दिए गए। ये एक तरह से तख्ता पलट करने की कोशिश है, एक चुनी हुई सरकार का, एक ऐतिहासिक रूप से चुनी हुई सरकार का।
It is unfortunate that Manish Sisodia, who's the Deputy CM of Delhi, just blames BJP for everything. What does he mean by takhta palat? On what basis will the LG not assert his own role as a Lieutenant Governor of the city state?
हर चीज में क्या सीएम चाहेंगे तो लेफ्टिनेंट गवर्नर भी सीएम के हिसाब से काम करेंगे, सारे ब्यूरोक्रेट सीएम के हिसाब से काम करेंगे, दिल्ली के मेयर भी सीएम के हिसाब से ही काम करे। वो लगातार किसी भी तरह से जो कन्फ्रंटेशन की पॉलिटिक्स है और मीडिया और सुर्खियों में बने रहने के लिए ये उनकी आदत है।
The turf war between the Lieutenant Governor and the Delhi government is not new. Kejriwal has repeatedly accused the Lieutenant Governor of acting on the orders of the union government instead of playing a non-partisan role. However, Article 239 of the Constitution says that the Lieutenant Governor is the representative of state authority in Delhi. Closure is not in sight in the latest episode. Kejriwal tweeted saying he has sought time from President Pranab Mukherjee to draw attention to the Delhi situation. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now for other national stories, let's take you nationwide. A case of religious violence has been reported in Rajasthan's Nagaur district, where 4 members of the Dalit community were run over by tractors over a land dispute. 7 others were also injured during a sudden flare-up between the two groups. A person has been arrested in connection with the case. Security forces in Kashmir Baramulla district busted a militant hideout and recovered large amount of arms and ammunition. The operation was carried out jointly by the state police and the army over the information on the movements of militants in the area for the past 3 weeks. Only last night they got the latest information that led to the bust. The Saket Court in Delhi fixed the date of hearing on Terry Director General R.K. Pachauri's plea seeking permission to enter office. The complainant had earlier filed a plea for cancellation of his anticipatory plea before a high court. Additional Sessions Judge R. Kumar Tripathi said that the judicial propriety demands that the matter be heard only after the Delhi High Court decides the plea for cancellation of anticipatory bail of the accused. On the 13th of February this year, an FIR was registered against Pachauri on charges of sexual harassment. And still ahead, we've got international news, and the ousted Egyptian president is sentenced to death. We'll get you details of that in just a bit.
गजल का हसीन सफर, यादों के दरीचे से कामयाबियों की मंजिल तक का सफर।
गगन में करीब 10-12 शेर थे। उस शख्स को सारे शेर याद थी नॉटिंगम में, वो शेर पढ़ रहा है और मैं यहाँ से गा रहा हूँ।
क्या बात है।
तो वहाँ जो मजा आया उस दिन शायरी और शायर के कलाम गाने का, वो बहुत कम।
मिलिए शख्सियत में सुदीप बैनर्जी से शनिवार रात 10:30 बजे और रविवार सुबह 11 बजे सिर्फ राज्यसभा टीवी पर।
आजादी के बाद कैसे बदला परिवेश, कैसे बनी संसद, कैसे उठा देश।
When the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
कौन थे वो लोग जो दे गए हमको शानदार विरासत, लोकतंत्र की मजबूत इमारत। राज्यसभा टेलीविजन।
Welcome back. Let's get you some international news now. And in the US, a jury today sentenced the Boston Marathon bomber Zohar Tsarnaev to death by lethal injection. Tsarnaev is likely to be moved to a federal prison in Indiana for the execution. 3 people were killed and scores were injured when he, along with his brother, planted bombs at the finishing line of the Boston Marathon in 2013.
Today the jury has spoken, and Zohar Tsarnaev will pay with his life for his crimes.
Sentenced to death, 21-year-old Zohar Tsarnaev will now await execution in the federal prison in Terre Haute in Indiana. He will be put to death by a lethal injection. Tsarnaev stood unmoved and remorseless as the jury pronounced the sentence after an emotional, exhausting trial.
The trial of this case has showcased an important American ideal, that even the worst of the worst deserve a fair trial and due process of law. The defendant claimed to be acting on behalf of all Muslims. This was not a religious crime, and it certainly does not reflect true Muslim beliefs. It was a political crime designed to intimidate and to coerce the United States.
Victims who were present in the trial room sobbed as the verdict was read out. One of them, who had nearly bled to death, said, "An eye for an eye," in Tsarnaev's own words.
Happy is not the word I would use. There is nothing happy about having to take somebody's life. I'm satisfied. I'm grateful that they came to that conclusion, because for me, I think it was the just conclusion.
I have to watch my two sons. I have to watch my two sons put a leg on every day. So, I mean, I don't know closure, but I can tell you it feels like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. So I think there is some form of a good feeling.
Joker Sarnev, a former high school wrestler and an ethnic Chechen, was found guilty of placing a pair of homemade pressure cooker bombs at the finishing point of the Boston Marathon on April 15, 2013, as well as for fatally shooting a policeman. 3 people were killed and 260 others were injured. His accomplice and brother Tamilan was killed in a police encounter following the incident. The jury's decision does not mean that death is imminent for Sarnev. Reports suggest that defense attorneys are likely to appeal the decision. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And another death sentence made news today. An Egyptian court has sentenced ousted President Mohamed Morsi to death for his role in a mass jailbreak in 2011. The country's religious authorities will now give their opinion before the verdict is carried out. Morsi has already been sentenced to 20 years in jail for torturing protesters during his regime. Here's more.
It's the death sentence for ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. The Cairo court pronounced the maximum punishment for him over a mass jailbreak in 2011.
بعد الاطلاع على المادة 381 من قانون الإجراءات الجنائية قررت المحكمة إرسال أوراق القضية إلى فضيلة مفتي الجمهورية.
The future of Morsi and 100 other Muslim Brotherhood leaders is now in the hands of the top religious leader, Grand Mufti, who will give his final opinion in the case. Final verdict is due for June 2nd.
سعد توفيق مصطفى الكتاتني محمد مرسي عيسى العياط عصام الدين محمد حسين العريان. وحددت جلسة 2/6/2015.
Morsi has already been sentenced for 20 years in prison for arresting and torturing protesters during his rule. Morsi and his co-defendants are accused of collaborating with the Palestinian Islamist group Hamas and the Lebanese Shia group Hezbollah to break into several prisons across Egypt in January 2011, facilitating the escape of several prisoners. Mohamed Morsi, Egypt's first democratically elected president, was deposed by a military coup in July 2013. Since his ouster, the military launched a crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now changing tracks, let's get you the latest in the world of sports. Olympic medalist Gagan Narang earned a berth for the 2016 Rio Olympics after winning a bronze medal in the 50 meters rifle prone event of the ISSF World Cup. Narang is the third Indian shooter to make the Rio cut after Jeetu Rai and Apurvi Chandela. Rafael Nadal bowed out of the Rome Masters with a straight set defeat against Stanislas Wawrinka in the quarter-final. With this loss, Nadal is almost certain to be out of the top 4 seeds for a Grand Slam for the first time since 2005. American Justin Gatlin ran the joint 6th quickest 100 meters time in history to dominate the field in the Diamond League opener in Doha. The 33-year-old, who has served 2 doping bans, sprinted away to win his first race of 2015 in a time of 9.74 seconds, a world best for this year. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. From the entire team here, good night.